First, I'd like to introduce Johnese Spisso, who is president of UCLA Health, CEO of UCLA Hospital System, and associate vice chancellor of UCLA Health Sciences. Glad you're with us again. Chad Lefteris is CEO of UCI Health. Thank you for making the trip up. We appreciate it. For the first time joining this group is Dr. Jeffrey Golden. He is director of the Burns and Allen Research Institute, vice dean for research and graduate education at Cedars-Sinai. Thank you for being with us. Dr. Elaine Batchlor, welcome back. It's good to have you again this year. She's CEO of MLK Community Healthcare, and congratulations, you're a new member of the University of California Board of Regents. We're very, very, very proud of you. And Dr. Anish Mahajan. Thank you for sitting at the end, Dr. Mahajan. I seem to remember you being at the end last year too. However, you'll get the first word. CEO and Chief Medical Officer of Harbor-UCLA Medical Center. Thanks for being with us. All right, so we're talking about innovating for future success. I can't think of a better discussion for this group. We're coming off of a couple of years of a worldwide pandemic. So Dr. Mahajan, let me start with you first. What new innovations are helping you to fulfill your organization's mission?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here and join the panel. That's a great question. There's so much innovation constantly happening, but as I think about the answer, I'd say at a high level, we are looking at sort of how we can improve data capture, how we can improve sort of our ability to use tools like natural language processing to really sort of capture the clinical insights that are happening across the enterprise to help improve our data capture for revenue, but also to improve it for decision support. So that's one major area. The second I'd say is automation. How can we use automation in various sections of the health system, including in the lab, for example, to improve our efficiencies, reduce our personnel costs, and really get a better outcome. So those are just a couple examples.
Dr. Batchlor?
Sure, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here again this year. So I think about the way that we're using innovation in our health system in sort of three different buckets. One is how we're using it to improve patient safety and clinical care. And examples of that include use of artificial intelligence to detect patterns and provide alerts to staff. So for example, we have a solution that integrates data from our devices and the electronic health record system to give our staff alerts for patients who are developing sepsis, which is a very serious infection. So patient safety is one bucket. The second is what I would call patient engagement or patient facing. And an example of that is a chatbot that we use that's on our website that engages our patients. They can do anything from look up symptoms to make an appointment to actually have an interactive visit. And then finally, those that are making life easier for our providers. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of innovation coming in the near future. One of the biggest headaches for providers is the electronic health record system and all of the time they spend entering information into that system. We're evolving toward ambient transcription, toward voice commands so that they can interact with the record through voice commands, virtual reality being used in training, and virtual care that can extend the time of our providers. So those are some of the ways that I think about it.
We're just getting started in this conversation. Dr. Golden.
Yeah, thank you, and it's really an honor to be part of this esteemed group. I'm going to pivot a little bit because while there's so many different things we could talk about in the hospital, I want to talk a little bit about the innovation that's happening in science, and that is around single-cell biology, something that's really evolved and really only become available over the last 10 years. But what it's allowing us to do is study disease no longer at the tissue level or at the organ level, but actually at the foundation of where disease is, at the cellular level, where we can now dissect out, for example, and I'll use a tumor, but I could talk about neurodegenerative disease or cardiovascular disease, any of these. We can actually take a tumor and look not just at the tumor cells, and the tumor cells aren't a uniform population. They're actually mutating all the time, so there's many different cell types. We can look at other cells that are from the host, the blood vessels, the immune cells, the fibroblasts that interact with the tumor cells, and understand at the genome level, the transcriptome level, the proteome level, and the metabolome level, and then understand how those all interact with each other. And this is allowing us to identify new targets, new pathways in how these cells are leading to the growth of a tumor. And this is directing us immediately into things like our biomanufacturing center, where we can make targeted cells that will actually attack these tumors. And it's all based on being able to do this single cell biology. And so for me, being able to really do this personalized medicine, something I don't think we've really achieved that personalized medicine, is really getting to the fundamentals of the disease itself.
Absolutely. Mr. Lefteris.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Judy. And I can't believe you have to go last to answer this. So I'll try and maybe switch it a little bit more, which is more about process, that there are so many innovations, and again, across our health systems and beyond. But maybe I'll talk a little bit about something that we're doing that might be a little unique, is that we did create our own health system-based innovation fund. And we partnered with the UCOP, Office of the President, Chief Investment Officer, to help him and his team and to help us identify some of these amazing opportunities to invest in. I like to say that, as you all know better than I, that there's lots of good money out there to go after for investment, but we get to provide a laboratory to do some of the things that you've already heard my colleagues mention, in addition to being a strategic investor, and that's helping us identify some of these things to work differently. There's no shortage of things to work. And so this fund just allows us to narrow that down and narrow that down and narrow that down even further, and hopefully also get a nice return out of it in the end. But actually, we're getting much more out of it, and so is the company as well.
Absolutely. President Spisso.
Well, thank you. And first of all, thank you to LABEST for including this discussion on healthcare, and also want to thank the UCLA Technology Development Group for always thinking of healthcare as well. I think what you're hearing is really innovation is a key part of our strategy now in healthcare, and it couldn't come at a more important time when we're seeing really a remarkable need to really transform the way that we do business. And so here at UCLA Health, about 5 years ago, we launched our Innovation Center in the health system, and then also a program for biodesign. So as we look at that, it really is bringing in the voice of our people who are providing care, our doctors, our nurses, our social workers, and really enabling them to take that idea from initial concept all the way through commercialization when appropriate. And we really provide them with a resource, we call it a startup in a box, to really guide those ideas. And that comes forward from the great partnership we've had from many of you in the LABEST community, and looking at everything from how do we improve accessibility to care, how do we improve access and accuracy of the care that we're providing, how do we tie in all the elements from our precision medicine program, and then really, most importantly, I think for us in healthcare, how do we translate all of those to a better patient experience, right? People know they're coming to us for the best care, but it's really how we make that care patient-centered and individualized so that they can really see the value on that. And then finally, I'll say one of the things I'm most excited about is we've just launched a tech equity accelerator, looking at all the issues we have, particularly in Los Angeles with health disparities. We're really looking to see how we can better bridge some of those gaps and really make some meaningful progress. But it takes a whole community, and it's wonderful that we've seen such excitement about innovation in all of our Los Angeles health systems.
We're already starting to hear a lot about AI. We heard Dr. Borla talk about it this morning. Dr. Batchlor, you mentioned. So, President Spisso, what are we doing with AI here at UCLA Health? And I'll go down the line to hear what other people have to say as well.
So exciting, and I think really as we think about transforming our work ahead, definitely have to have a lot of guardrails in place, but we're seeing some really promising developments in artificial intelligence. We've had a little bit of a head start on that. For years, we've worked with our UCLA Department of Computational Medicine to really use AI to really help us with everything from a lot of complex algorithms we were looking at through the COVID-19 pandemic to really now looking at mining a lot of the data, like Anish said, to say how does that longitudinal data help you in a more predictive model. So definitely working on things with that. We've been using chatbots to really try to respond better and more accurately to patients. We have a lot of work now in our population health areas looking at predictors for everything from kidney disease to heart disease and using that information. One of the projects we've had in place for the past few years is looking longitudinally at data from all patients who go to surgery and their outcome and be able to predict which patients must have a pre-anesthesia visit, which patients don't need that. So looking as well on how we allocate resources better by AI. So I think the opportunity for making care safer is definitely on the horizon.
It's making an impact already. Mr. Lefteris, I'm sure it's doing that at UCI as well.
Yeah, what an opportunity, and you're right, many of us have been dabbling in this for years, and I think guardrails are extremely important. You just hit on that. I also think, Dr. Batchlor, you just hit on it, like our providers are starved for this. None of them want to spend more time in front of the computer screen, right, at night or while they're with a patient or everything in between, and so we are focusing our work, just like you described, on how can we improve the work life through these tools. Not to mention all the amazing potential for outcomes and other things, but really using it as a retention strategy and recruitment strategy for new faculty and other new hires that are at the bedside that just don't want to only interact with that screen anymore.
Dr. Golden?
Yeah, so at Cedars, we actually, when I got there 2.5 years ago, we didn't have a department of computational biomedicine, so we started it, and it's grown quite rapidly. And what we've really focused on is the fact that right now we have just enormous amounts of data in healthcare, but that data is not structured in a way that we can actually interrogate all that data simultaneously about single patients. So if you think about it, imaging files that are in like a TIFF or a JPEG are very different than laboratory data that might be in an Excel spreadsheet or data that may be written out in paragraphs that you have to pull out using natural language processing. So what we've been working on is actually building the tools to structure that data so that those orthogonal data types are actually relational to each other, giving us the real value of being able to interrogate multiple different types of data to better understand our patients, to better understand populations of patients, and be able to do these things that you've just heard about, which is improve safety, improve quality, improve outcomes, improve diagnostic decision-making or therapeutic decision-making. And all of those are coming from being able to interrogate all the data simultaneously as opposed to having these silos of data that don't actually interact with each other. And I think that's a key innovation as we go forward that we need to be thinking about in healthcare.
Dr. Batchlor, you gave us a preview. I'm
Yes.
curious about your guardrails.
Yeah, so there are so many exciting applications of artificial intelligence in healthcare that it's almost hard to, narrow in on it. But I'll give a couple of more examples. Use of artificial intelligence to help with capacity management. All of our hospitals are full now, and we're struggling to provide access to people in the community. So using artificial intelligence to predict throughput and to help with capacity management in the hospital. Using AI to monitor patients and substitute for staff. We're all also struggling with labor shortages, and AI can help our staff with pattern recognition. Example, we're using virtual sitters in our hospital, and the virtual sitters have AI embedded in their workflow so that they notice things that staff might miss. So it both makes them more efficient and it provides safer patient care. And then lastly, a clinical application in diagnostic imaging, using AI to help our radiologists cope with the high volume of imaging studies that we're now seeing, and to help them identify clinical problems and to do a better job of that. Those are some examples of where we're deploying AI now.
So many innovations.
Yes.
Dr. Mahajan.
Yeah, I would echo all of the examples that were given in our system as well. I'll just pick up on the point about workforce shortages and expense. We have a different generation that's going to take care of us that are coming into the workforce. They have different expectations and our experience about their work-life balance than generations prior. Maybe every generation says that about the subsequent, but we are certainly feeling it, and we have shortages. And we have shortages in nursing attendants, so the telesitting cameras are very important. But I would say even in radiology, in pathology, in these sort of highly specialized physician fields where often you need 24-hour coverage, and we have labor shortages, we need further AI applications like the radiology, AI imaging, and in other disciplines to sort of make our health systems work really well in a 24/7 fashion.
So coming out of the pandemic, we've talked a lot about the financial aspects that have been challenging for healthcare leaders, for hospital systems, particularly in Southern California. We're seeing that. Dr. Mahajan, I'll start with you. How can we continue to safely and effectively staff our institutions when the costs of goods, services, and healthcare labor are rising?
I'd welcome any answers to that question from
I don't
anybody
have the
else in the
answer.
room, to be honest. But it's a great question, and it's a hard one to answer, and it matters in how you're reimbursed, right? We at the DHS, the Department of Health Service County Health System, we're a capitation-based system, and so what we are trying to do is use innovation and applications to have that sort of global budget model go as far as it can for the lives that we're responsible for. And underneath that heading, it means all of the kinds of things we've just been discussing to try to ensure that we can provide very high quality of care with the budget we have.
Dr. Batchlor, you touched on staffing challenges. This is really in all of your wheelhouses. I know it is.
Yeah, so not just the constraints on costs, but we are not going to have the staff that we have today to continue to provide care in the same models that we're using today. So we're going to have to pivot. One of those pivots is toward more virtual care. So for example, a lot of health systems are now figuring out how to provide hospital care at home. And technology is an important part of doing that, to provide monitoring, to provide algorithms and alerts when things aren't going well. So that's one of the ways that we're going to become more efficient. And we're also going to change how we engage patients. So we now know that you don't have to have an in-person visit for every problem. In fact, you don't necessarily have to even interact with a provider. You could interact with an algorithm that quickly diagnoses and treats a problem. So really it's changing the model of how we provide care and making it more efficient and making better use of our staff, the staff that we do have. So providing decision support to them.
Dr. Golden, do you agree?
Absolutely. I'll start with agreeing with Dr. Maharaj. We need answers. Any help we can get would be fantastic. This is a challenge, very challenging for all of us. And one of the things that I think is just kind of a continuation of what you've been hearing is making sure we deliver the right care in the right place. Someone should not be getting a simple appendectomy in an OR that's situated to do complex surgery that has an MRI and a PET scanner in the OR. That's a waste of resources. So that's just a kind of glaring example of where we want to make sure that the right services are applied at the right time for the right patient. And one of the things that we're doing to advance that is use, as you've just heard, chatbots and AI that help patients come through and understand. They can talk to this chatbot, tell it, they'll hear what they need, and they'll get directed to the right place for the most efficient care. And I think that's going to be really important in making sure we get the right patients to the right location for the right care. And that's a key part of our efficiencies going forward.
Sounds like innovation is really helping for you too, correct, Mr. Lefteris?
Yeah, thank you. I do agree with my colleagues here, and I want to go back to the workforce piece for a moment. And I just saw a stat that over 3.4 million of the non-clinical workers will exit our health systems over the next 5 years. We run small cities, right? We have incredible colleagues from every walk of life. And so how do we leverage some of these technologies to fill some of these gaps is extremely important. We are spending a lot of time doubling down on the retention of our workforce as the new recruitment. because turnover is extremely expensive. We all know that. We've known that forever. But really focusing on retention differently, in a different way, and then that spreads and has helped really reduce our spend. The other thing that we're also doing within Orange County and the Inland Empire is looking for other best-in-class partners that will bring creative ways to solve problems around cost differently that we may not even be aware of yet, and leveraging our clinical expertise with their very specific knowledge, and together might bend the cost curve a little bit differently.
Very good. And President Spisso.
I agree with everything, but I also think we have a fundamental problem in healthcare that's getting increasingly worse, and particularly in our state in California. And so first of all, I'll say absolutely getting the right patient to the right site at the right time. We've all been doing that, right? I mean, at UCLA, we have 280 clinics in the region. Majority of our oncology care is provided now in outpatient infusion centers. Things like blood and marrow transplants, a large portion of those are now even done on an outpatient. But the reality is our California hospitals are still flooded and boarding patients every day. And because of the challenges in reimbursement, we'll have 12 hospitals, I think is our latest number we're predicting, in our state closed this year. They're distressed hospitals, and they're in some of our most vulnerable communities. So as we're all working on, being more efficient, reducing costs, we still have a fundamental issue with healthcare financing. And given the constraints we have as institutions, we have seismic standards to meet coming up in 2030 that are very resource intensive. We're still at our most, vulnerable point in really being a very resource intensive, low margin to now becoming no margin business. So we need it's not something we can do alone. We need better financing at both the state and federal level so that we can really be here to serve the communities that we need.
So many hospitals are closing in our community. That's distressing. So the next question I have, and I'll start with you, President Spisso, how is your organization's work in health equity, diversity, and inclusion evolving to better serve the Los Angeles community?
Yes. Well, I'm really just so proud of the staff at UCLA Health and the work that we've really been doing over the past few years to really begin to address the enormous problems we have in our community with health inequities. Many of you, if you were coming in the front, you saw one of the new programs that we launched, which is our Homeless Healthcare Collaborative. So one of the things we know is providing people with just coverage, just giving everyone Medi-Cal coverage, doesn't really make sure that patients are getting access to care. And in Los Angeles, we have a large homeless population, anywhere between 60 to 80,000 people that are experiencing homeless every night. So our program was really looking to say, how do we go out to those areas and really provide the health care? And so our vans, which in a few months will be up to now 6 vans, are actually a primary care clinic in a van where we can really provide extensive services and then also get the patients established in one of our regular clinics or a federally qualified health center or someplace close to them for ongoing care. So that's some of the early work. The other thing that we're doing, we've joined about 40 other health systems in the country to be part of a healthcare anchor network, which is looking at not only the work we do providing healthcare, but how as a very large health system are we really part of the community, looking at addressing the needs in community health, looking at who we contract with, how we make investments in the community that really support the well-being.
So those of you who are going to be walking outside our building, the healthcare van, homeless healthcare collaborative van, will be there till about 11:30. So I'll put in a little plug for that. So, Mr. Lefteris.
Yeah, and thanks for having that vehicle here today. I've heard so much about it. It is a model for the future. I would maybe like to say it starts at home first within the health system. With over 8,000 coworkers at UCI Health, spanning services to a population of about 4 million, we've been spending a lot of time inwardly focused on this topic to make sure that we're reflecting our community differently. And I like to say, as the CEO, I don't get to own a whole lot. I have a fantastic team, but this one is too important to delegate. And so I actually lead this work with an amazing physician co-chair who's renowned for this work in this space and leading our work in the community. And it has been really fun and powerful to sit, if you will, at the top of the organization and lead this work differently, leveraging our federally qualified health centers like Johnese. We own and operate 2 of those throughout our community, leveraging the learnings there We shared some innovations just last night with leaders about what we've learned in those two centers and the impact it's having on those very, very specific communities that we knew prior to the pandemic were underserved. And then it shined a light on it so differently and almost smacked us all in the face. So we continued to target differently through those vehicles. But again, I think it starts at home. I'm just a kid from the mountains of North Carolina. What do I know about this topic?
Apparently a lot.
We are surrounding ourselves with experts to make sure that we can have the impact that we need to have.
That's terrific. Dr. Golden.
Yeah, so for us, it starts with a partnership with the community and making sure that we're reaching out to identify those places where we need to be, where our needs are most relevant, and then investing in that. And this last year, Cedars invested over $35 million in these projects by identifying the communities that were at need and then going and partnering with them and really creating that partnership as working together with physicians and staff from Cedars-Sinai with the community leaders in those needy areas that we serve. So that was a key part of it. But since we're talking about innovation, I thought I would also mention that there's a number of examples, and I'll just give one or two that I think are important for us to not only be partnering with them, but learning from them. So one example is in the LGBTQ community, where we recently just published a study, this about 3 weeks ago, where we were looking at individuals who had gone through a sex change operation, they had become women, and it was always assumed because they get drugs like estrogens that prevent them presumably from getting prostate cancer that they wouldn't be getting prostate cancer. We actually went out and studied that population and found that they actually are getting prostate cancer at the same rate that men do that have not undergone any type of sex change operation. So understanding what those needs are and making sure that we're fulfilling that to screen them like we screen everybody else, to screen these women, to make sure that their healthcare needs are being met. And that's an example of the kinds of things that I think are important to do to make sure we understand the partnerships that need to be evolved, to make sure we understand what the needs are, and then serving those needs.
Dr. Batchlor.
So my healthcare system is located in South Los Angeles, and for those of you who are familiar with LA, you know that that is one of our most vulnerable, underserved communities in California. We like to say that bringing access to healthcare, not just healthcare, but high quality healthcare to our community is an act of social justice. And in our current environment, it's a radical act of social justice. We're proud of the fact that our hospital and health system is recognized by CMS as a 5-star hospital. We think that is an important symbol of what ought to be provided in underserved communities. And to that end, we are spending a lot more of our time on policy advocacy. Johnese talked about the fact that the Medicaid program provides coverage, but it doesn't necessarily provide access and quality to our underserved communities. So talking about that fact, telling stories about the patients and the impact that it has on them and on our communities, and advocating for better funding through the Medicaid program. We're also partnering with journalists and the media to lift up those stories and to make the stories more visible and to stimulate our policymakers to take action. And then we're also more aggressively reaching out to partners like UCLA, who we believe could bring quality and access to people in our community and share some of their talent and resources as well. So those are some of the things that we're focused on, as well as also developing a more diverse workforce. We're proud of the fact that our workforce is primarily people of color. So that's an important aspect of it as well.
And we're grateful for the partnerships. Dr. Mahajan.
Yeah, I respect and admire some of the examples we've heard, all of the examples we've heard from the health systems that are represented in ours as well, about sort of inward, staff-oriented initiatives initiatives that identify the disparities among our patients that we serve and community engagement. But at the risk of sounding pessimistic, but really instead to sort of challenge and to sort of speak real about the disparities we're facing, ultimately the answer can't come from the health systems. What you're hearing all of us say is we are optimizing what we can do. But at the end of the day, my argument would be, and as we heard in the keynote just before, to this audience of innovation usually passes these communities by. The example that was given by the Director General just before was that vaccine equity has not been achieved, right? There's a tremendous scientific progress. It saved the planet from COVID pandemic, and yet countries around the world haven't yet had access. And the same thing happens in our country. And so really, I think the question for all of us is, while the health systems like ours can optimize our engagement, we can optimize our, the limited financing that we have to outreach, what we really need is an investment in the other sectors, in education, in social spending, that's going to enable communities to then take the access that we're so hardworking trying to give and take advantage of that. In the absence of that, I'm going to argue that the scale of change we need to address disparities will fall far short. And this group, this group that is focused on giving us the scientific advancements, please heed this call that, how can you structure your patents? How can you ensure that your patents don't restrict these innovations only to occur in the halls of UCLA Health, but to also come to MLK Community Hospital and my hospital, where we're on a Medicaid and Medi-Cal budget.
That's why we invite all of you here today. It's a great dialogue. So as we start to conclude our remarks with this particular panel, I'd like to give each of you an opportunity. Dr. Mahajan, I'll start with you and we'll come right on down the line, just to give some final thoughts to the group. I'm curious, what will we be talking about a year from now when we're sitting up here? And what's your charge for the people in the audience, whether they're students, they're faculty members, they're postdocs, or members of industry?
Well, I would say for us, innovation is mostly about many of the things you heard, but getting the patients at the right place at the right time and getting them the services that they need. And, there's a lot of predictive analytics that can help us do that. There's a lot of patient-facing AI that has risks in terms of not taking into account potential biases against traditionally underserved populations. But let's just note that and try to move past that. I think that for me, what's most exciting is sort of the use of predictive analytics for capacity management and the use of these kinds of techniques to engage communities and patients in a more cost-effective way.
Very good. Dr. Batchlor.
Okay, I have no idea what we'll be talking about a year from now. We've had a lot of surprises over the past couple of years. But I guess if I would leave people with a final thought, it is to question your assumptions and think differently and not shy away from trying to solve really tough problems and even problems that everyone else is saying can't be solved. They can't be solved until someone has the nerve to step up and solve them. So, question assumptions, think differently about things, and don't shy away from taking on our biggest problems.
And courage to step up, as Dr. Borla
Absolutely.
said. Dr. Golden.
What I hope we're talking about next year is how we've solved some of these problems today. But I don't think we're going to be there. And I think that just goes to the point that what you've heard today are structural challenges we have in the healthcare industry that are financial, that are around delivery of healthcare to all patients, to all communities, to how we use new innovation, whether it's technology or whether it's new understanding of disease. And what I hope we're going to be talking about next year is how we've learned from where we are now and been able to start applying it to start seeing a needle move in terms of the progress in these challenges we've raised today.
I feel like I've given you all a crystal ball here and you don't like it. Mr. Lefteris?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I will say that we need your help, right? As health systems across the country, we can only do so much, to your point. And the more we can leverage the talent that exists around us in this incredible community of Southern California to impact differently. I look forward to sitting here next year and talking about those impacts differently because of the partnerships and collaborative nature of this really environment, not just this meeting, but in general, and really leveraging those to the benefit of our communities. I think that would be a powerful panel, right?
We hope you'll all come back.
So I look forward to leveraging our fund with potential partners to do that. I think that's a real opportunity.
Excellent. And President Spisso, the final word.
Yes, well, I'm hopeful that at the rate that things are moving now, that next year we'll have some additional breakthroughs. I think, over the past 2 years, we've seen what can happen when we have all of these incredible minds together. Here at UCLA, I'm so excited about our future and the potential of our Immunology Institute under the leadership of Chancellor Block, Dr. John Mazziota, and the amazing brilliance of Dr. Ari Baldegran and others in bringing that together to really look at how we transform medicine and healthcare in the future. So I think as much as we have challenges in healthcare, we're approaching some of our most exciting and opportunistic times.
I love how you've ended on an optimistic note. Johnese Spisso, Chad Lefteris, Jeffrey Goldie, Elaine Batchlor, Anish Mahajan, thank you so much for your time. Please thank all of them.